Prince Andrew is no longer Prince Andrew. King Charles III has stripped away Andrew of his royal titles after new revelations about his relationship with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
Emails released earlier in October showed that Andrew was in contact with Epstein for longer than most people expected. Charles also evicted the former prince from his royal residence. Buckingham Palace said in a statement, quote, "These censures are deemed necessary, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations against him. Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse."
Andrew will now be called Mr. Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor. The late Virginia Roberts Giuffre, whose memoir released last year, had made sexual abuse allegations against Andrew that have been brought to light again. Giuffre's brother, Sky Roberts, told BBC in a statement, quote, "Today, an ordinary American girl from an ordinary American family brought down a British prince with her truth and extraordinary courage."
It should be noted that Andrew has always denied Giuffre's claims. Despite that, however, Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit against him, resulting in Andrew paying millions in an out-of-court settlement. Andrew also acknowledged her suffering as a sex trafficking victim. Meanwhile, reactions poured in on X. Political commentator Link Lauren writing, "Prince Andrew just had his title stripped. Meghan and Harry must be next."
Now, Huffington Post and New York Magazine journalist Yashir Ali had a more analytical take. He wrote, quote, "Have to wonder if there's some money involved in this matter from the king's personal funds. After all, now that he's lost everything, what's stopping Andrew from writing a juicy tell-all, selling private correspondence and photos? The thing that's keeping him in line since the Queen died has been Royal Lodge and his titles."
That's an interesting point from Yashar. I hadn't considered that, and I wonder if there was some kind of backroom deal.
Because he seems like the type to write a tell-all.
Yeah, he's messy.
Yeah, he's very, obviously, to say the least.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the historical significance, well, first of all, I think this is about time that they did something. I think that sweeping under the rug of this whole thing and the protecting of royals, there has to be a limitation to that, right? And when you see that he's paid out the survivor in millions, I know that settling a case doesn't mean that you're guilty, but the fact that there was so much smoke, I mean, every time some news story came out, like the relationship between him and Epstein lingered longer than anyone that we're even talking about in the U.S. so far. But it's almost unprecedented for a British royal to be stripped of their title. I think the last comparable one, I looked it up, was in 1919, Prince Ernest Augustus, and he lost his title for supporting Germany in World War I, which is wild. So you see how egregious, it has to be. And so I think, after years of this back and forth, we're going to have to see how else people handle this. I think, and not tying it to President Trump, not tying it to Bill Clinton, looking at how it affects us here in the U.S. If there are people that had lasting relationships and money trails that the Treasury Department can find with people that we revere or look at or have unlimited power because of their business practices in our society right now, they should be held accountable when it comes down to Epstein. And I think that even though it took way too long, probably for all survivors, the fact that we're not allowing somebody to sit on a pedestal, or Britain is not allowing somebody to sit on a pedestal that behaved in this manner, is something that I think is an admirable step forward, and America should follow suit.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of surprised, actually, that they finally followed through, because his name has been all over Epstein-related content for a long time. And this being the final straw is kind of interesting. Obviously, Virginia Giuffre passed away this year, and this memoir was released after she died. And so she doesn't even really get to see, at least, justice while she was alive. And so that's obviously very difficult, and it's just a little, I think that it should have been done sooner.
There's also this stain on the UK, and I'm saying this because we recently did a docuseries there, and I think as Americans, and I can only speak to our experiences, that you go there and it has this almost whimsical feel, right? They have something that we don't have. They have royalty and a lot of things that we don't subscribe to, but there's a fascination. You can look at the sheer numbers of how many people around the world watch the royal wedding and how much people are fascinated globally with the royal family. So to see them attached to something this egregious, even when our president goes to visit and is met with all the statesmanship and all the decor and everything, there's huge demonstrations about Epstein and the royal attachment to Epstein, specifically with with the prince. So it's kind of like, so to Prince Andrew. So to see that they can remove that stain from themselves and every single thing they do won't be now protesters calling them to task on this. I think that the king was facing like mounted pressure. I'm not sure why now was the time, but the pressure kept going. And obviously no matter what state leader came to visit or what was happening, you're seeing protests over there. So it's almost like the royal family, although they're not scandal free, probably thought this was overwhelming and too much. And seeing that it's even escalating here in the US is probably a sign that, like, listen, the most fire and smoke we've seen has been on the end of Prince Andrew. And so you guys need to call to account what happened or what didn't happen and be clear about where you stand. Because if there's any confusion, people will attach the entire royal family to sex trafficking, and that will continue to be a comparison that circles around endlessly and puts a stain on that family.
I wonder if this is a new direction for the royal family, because historically, with this 1919 exception, typically what happens when they're facing scandal is they close ranks and they cover up, right?
Right.
They try to protect the members of the family from anything that could be damaging from a PR perspective. But they're also very loyal, right? They don't throw each other under the bus. They try to plant things in the media, manipulate to try to prevent any of them from looking bad for any extended period of time. In this case, perhaps Prince Andrew's transgressions were just too severe for them to keep ignoring. But I also wonder, maybe this is a more modern approach to the royal family where things are going to have to be a little more tightened up, and we're not just going to go out of our way to protect people who are involved in misbehavior.
And I think that's a welcome change if that is the case, because we're in a society where you can't really withhold information from people anymore. The amount of access, even though I have plenty of criticisms about social media and misinformation, the amount of access you have to actual factual information or perspectives on what possibly could be happening is fascinating. And so when you talk about back in the day, if let's say you watch shows like The Crown, which are obviously an exaggerated account of what happens with the royal family, but when you're acknowledging that they would give stories to the Daily Mail or work closely with tabloids for the look that they wanted to, or give them one scandal in order to turn away from a bigger scandal, that worked back in the day when that was the main source of information for people in the UK or even in the US. But now we have endless people that have either worked and left working with British royals, or write and have studied British royals for years. People who are doing their own podcasts, people in the US who are looking at historical information plus what's happening now and coming to the best conclusions. So when you have this much information and this many people speaking about topics now, you can't pretend in the same way that they used to. And so if that is the change, this is a modern and welcome change because it's going with the times. We can't be fooled by a headline anymore because that's not the only place we get information from.
Yeah, I mean, with independent media rising and you don't have just a few outlets controlling the conversation and the narrative, it's a lot harder to get all of these people in your sort of favor trading camp or on your payroll to do your PR work for you. You can't silence everybody because there's now millions of people who have access to social media and who are able to have their own investigatory, I guess, ways of going about looking at the royal family. So yeah, they definitely can't keep things locked up the way that they used to.
And there are so many people that look at the royal family. I'm not sure in the UK. I have a few friends from the UK that are like, don't come at our royal family, right? Like, this is protection. But then I know from a US perspective, we criticize, like, wait, why are they getting taxpayer dollars? What's happening? So I think they're also dealing with the mounting idea that a lot of people have maybe opened their eyes to the fact that, well, I guess maybe, but I think when you talk about history and
yeah, I like the tradition of it. I mean, I think that they do a lot of public service. It's lovely. Obviously, it wouldn't work in America
at all.
But it's nice to watch.
No kings protest.
Yeah, no kings. It's nice to watch from afar, though.
Yes, it is. The pomp and circumstance of it all is very fun.
I'm a big fan of tradition, so I do enjoy it. More big changes right here at home. They might be coming to CBS in the wake of Barry Weiss's appointment to editor-in-chief. Stay with us.